Intellectual Property is proudly brought to you by Adams & Adams, rooted in 100 years of excellence in intellectual property law.
Good evening, my name is Stefan Lamprecht. Our government has poured upwards of 600 million rand into the biotechnology sector over the last few years alone. To talk about this exciting field of innovation, I have in the studio with me William Modisakeng, a biotechnology IP specialist, and Donrich Jordaan, a biotech entrepreneur, as well as board member of the Biotech Industry Association of South Africa. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Donrich, starting off with you, what would you say is the main reason behind government's motivation for investing so heavily in the biotechnology sector?
Well, biotechnology is, of course, part and parcel of the knowledge economy. Okay. And I think our government has realized that for South Africa to prosper in the future, we must be strong in the knowledge economy, and therefore we must invest in biotechnology. I think it has been a very bold step of government to invest all of these resources in biotechnology.
And from your point of view as an entrepreneur, are there opportunities there?
There are definitely opportunities.
Okay. William, from your point of view, speaking about intellectual property, what is the main difference if I'm in biotechnology in terms of my approach to intellectual property?
Well, one of the main differences that one should appreciate right from the beginning is that biotechnology is knowledge-based. It's a knowledge-based business, and one naturally has to look into protecting that knowledge and exploiting it properly. Also the other difference is how biotech gets that information. The time period is much more longer than in most businesses, and therefore it is becoming more and more important for biotechnologists to protect their inventions as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
So let's unpack that. If you say it's a longer time life cycle in terms of getting from the idea right into the market, having to do R&D, getting certification for certain practices and so forth, it's a long sell before I can start getting any income with which to recoup that R&D investment. In order to do that, I need to have something to protect my investments.
That's definitely correct. You see, the problem here is just the research could take a minimum of 10 years, and there's other issues of regulatory compliance. Even before you begin with your research, there's other issues, regulatory compliance, having to get permits. For instance, in South Africa, one would have to get a bioprospecting permit, which itself could take up to 5 years to get. So once one gets the information, it then becomes important to protect it by all means.
From your point of view, do you think there is enough appreciation from the powers that be, either from the public side as well as from investors' point of view, of the fact that things take a bit longer than if I had to start up an internet business in my garage, for example?
There is that appreciation, although I believe that there could be some improvements. For instance, stricter time limits could be imposed on officials in government, and just monitoring the system that it's a well-oiled machine that moves as speedily as possible. Other than that, it all lies also with the inventor or the applicant in a patent or any other kind of IP protection, to make sure that they protect and they take all necessary steps at the right times to protect their ideas.
Okay. Donrich, from your point of view, from being an entrepreneur, do you think the typical SME in South Africa has got the ability to secure that kind of protection during this R&D phase?
Well, I think even before we start speaking about protection, because protection is only after you've really been successful with your R&D, I think it's one must look at intellectual property rights from the very beginning. Before research, during conceptualization phase, when you develop your business plan, you must already look at what is the patent landscape. And so already at that stage, I think intellectual property rights are absolutely essential, and I think there must be far more of a focus to awareness to look at IP even while conceptualizing the business plan.
So what you're saying is not just the actual protection, but in terms of doing those audits, looking at the landscape, who's doing what and so forth, that is an integral part also in my design of the R&D
Absolutely.
phase. Okay.
And to come then to your question of our SMEs, our biotech SMEs in South Africa really looking at that, or looking at enough. Well, it's difficult to answer, but perhaps I must rather look at the kind of funding that is available for that, because before you even have a business plan, while you're still in the conceptualization phase, who will fund that?
Yeah.
I think it's unrealistic to think that an SME will be able to fund that itself.
Especially if it's 10 years before I start getting money with which to pay
Yes,
office.
so what we see overseas is that there are systems in place of so-called pre-seed funding being given by the state, by public funding instruments to biotech SMEs to do this pre-R&D work, to research the business plan, to do research regarding the patent landscape. And that is absolutely essential.
Okay. I just want to come back, William, something that you mentioned in terms of bioprospecting. In terms of what's happening in South Africa, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Science and Technology, what other kinds of legal developments are there outside of the normal IP domain that impact on my IP management practices?
Well, I'll stick to IP, for instance, legal development within the IP. I'm not an expert in other fields. But we've seen a lot of new bills that are coming across. We now have the TIA bill, which also will affect the biotech industry.
So that's the Technology Innovation Agency bill that talks about this new instrument for funding.
It will not only affect biotechnology per se, it will also affect other fields of innovation. We've also seen now there's a bill, the Traditional Knowledge Bill, which in a way will affect biotechnology because it speaks to things like geographical indicators and things like that. And those will finally affect a biotech entrepreneur who wants to secure maybe a trademark name or things like that, that are not necessarily directly linked to research. But there are other things, as you rightfully said it now, we have the Patent Amendments Bill, which is which is complementary to the Biodiversity Act, speaking into protection of indigenous knowledge and indigenous biological resources.
I think if I can just add to what William has been saying, I think the barrier to entry for a biotech entrepreneur is definitely a lot higher than for instance, IT. If you start an IT company, you basically need a computer and internet access. But to start a biotech company, you need a laboratory with equipment worth millions, and then also you have to do a lot of research in intellectual property and regulatory compliance with all of these regulations and bills that are applicable. So it's definitely from the start a very challenging environment, but of course not without its opportunities and possible rewards. And that is one of the reasons, if I can just quickly say, why BioSA has been established last year as an organization of South African biotech SMEs to help each other and especially to help new entrepreneurs to navigate their way through this sea of regulatory obstacles, etc.
Thank you very much, Donrich. Thank you very much, William. I hope we're going to have an opportunity to come back and unpack a lot of these new laws and regulations impacting on the biotech sector. If you would like to find out more about biotechnology or the opportunities created through government's investment, visit the BioSA website at www.biosa.org.za for more information. That's all we have time for tonight. Until next time, from me, Stefan Lamprecht. Good evening.
Intellectual property was proudly brought to you by Adams & Adams, rooted in 100 years of excellence in intellectual property law.